If you didn't already know, reading is the best way to expand your vocabulary in any language. And since you're learning English, you're going to want to check out some of these books on the list that I have for you today. I'll have 10 books for intermediate and beginner English learners, and I'll have 10 books for advanced English learners as well. All of these books will be linked down in my Amazon storefront below. This video isn't sponsored, but if you just want to check out the list there, or if you buy off that list, I get a very small commission that would be great supporting the channel as well. I'll be talking about fiction or fake stories, imaginary stories first, and then I'll be talking about some nonfiction books, which are true informational books on this list today. I personally tend to read more nonfiction or true stories or informational stories than fiction stories, so my list is a little bit more skewed towards true books. If you like books too about self-improvement or how to improve your habits, I have tons of books on this list for you as well. Let's get started with 20 books that I would recommend to you as an English language learner. To start this list with some books that are good for intermediate and beginner English language learners, let's start with talking about some fiction books. Or remember, fiction in English means fake or made up stories. Now, I always recommend to my English students that they check out some young adult books because the language is simpler than what adults would read, but the stories are still great, and I even still read young adult literature today. One book that I'm sure you're familiar with, and you've probably seen the movie, maybe not in English, but in your foreign language, is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This book is by Roald Dahl, and this book is absolutely timeless, meaning no matter how old it is, it's still fun to read. And if you have kids, you could even try reading with them as well for this book. This book is, of course, about Charlie, and he gets the golden ticket to tour the chocolate factory that's just magical with Willy Wonka. I'm sure you guys have heard of this one, but if you're looking for something very simple to read, try out Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The second book on this list today is Holes by Louis Sekar. I love this book, and as a kid, I loved this movie so much with Shia LaBeouf. This book is really, really good. It's about Stanley Yelnats. He gets sent off to a juvenile delinquency camp where he is forced to dig holes to look for some mysterious treasure. This book, even as an adult, has so many twists and turns that are surprising, and of course the language is simple enough that as an intermediate or beginner English language learner, you can totally understand, and just to help you understand the book better, you can watch the movie after as well. I would highly recommend it. Number 3 on this list is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. Now, of course, this is a very classic children's book, but it could be really good to read as well to pick up some new English vocabulary. This magical children's story is about Charlotte the spider and Wilbur the pig and their friendship and their story of bravery. There's definitely some good lessons in this book if you want to read this book to your child, or if you're just looking for something very simple to read in English as well. My last 2 fiction recommendations for beginner and intermediate language learners are a little bit more challenging. They are for adults, but they will help you learn a lot about American culture, so that's why I recommend them if you're an English language learner and you're trying to speak with people in the United States. The first book, again, has a movie because it was so good. It's called The Help. If you're not familiar with American history, in the 1960s, there was the Civil Rights Movement, which was when people of color, so Black Americans, were fighting for their equal rights in the United States. And race is still a very important topic in the United States, I think even more so than foreign countries around the world. So if you're looking to start to understand our problems with race in the United States, this would be a good book to read. And this book is fictional, meaning it's made up, it's imaginary, but it will teach you about the 1960s in the United States and the Civil Rights Movement. The last book, if you're familiar with John Green, he writes a lot of novels for young people. This book is called The Fault in Our Stars. There's a great movie that's based on this book as well, but it follows two teens that are facing cancer. The two teens fall in love, and of course, this story is a love story and a tragedy. So if you like having emotional reading experiences, this book would be good for you. And definitely check out the movie afterwards as well. One way that I consume books is I listen to them on audiobooks. There are tons of ways to listen to audiobooks, but the best way that I like to do it is I have an Audible subscription, and using my link, you can get the first month free using Audible as well. Audible is an Amazon product that allows you to easily download audiobooks. And if you have a subscription, you get one a month, and it's just great for beefing up your reading. By this phrase, beefing up, I mean just starting to get more books that you've read. And I'm a multitasker, so I listen to audiobooks in the car, I listen to audiobooks while I'm walking or cleaning. I love looking on Audible because I've almost had an Audible subscription on and off for 10 years, so I can see how much I read each year, and I can go back and remember the books that I've read in the past as well, which really helped me make this list today. So if you don't have time to read, make sure you check out Audible because you'll get the first month free and you'll get to read one of the books off this list if you use my links down below. The sixth book on this list is a non-fiction story. It's called How to Talk to Anyone. And I recommended this book over and over again, especially to English learners, because communication is different in each culture. This book specifically focuses on American English speakers. It's not for English learners, it's for anyone, especially in the United States. It will just show you how to communicate more effectively and how to have people enjoy conversation with you and make a good impression when you meet someone, which I know as an English language learner can be really nerve-wracking. You can feel nervous the first time you meet someone. So check out this book if you're looking to improve your communication skills. And this book is in simple language as well. It is not hard to understand. Number 7 on my book list for you today is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, if you're just looking to have better habits in life, again, to make good impressions with people that you talk with and interact with, this book is great. I'm sure it's translated into your first language as well, but challenge yourself by reading it in English because it will help you improve your life. I first read this book when I was in high school, believe it or not, but a lot of the habits have really stuck with me today. Number 8 is Make Your Bed by Admiral William H. McRaven. The person who wrote this book was a Navy SEAL, which is a very accomplished military position in the United States. And he talks about how the small little tasks can really affect your life in a positive way. It's a very motivating book, and it's a very short book that you can probably read within a day or two, even if English is not your first language. Number 9 is Habit by Charles Duhigg. This book is insanely popular, but I would recommend it to English language learners because the book reads almost like stories because it takes real life examples of people and businesses that have used small habits to improve your life. When I read this book, I felt very motivated and inspired, and I remembered a lot of things from this book because it used real life examples, and it's super interesting. You can even talk about these stories with people that you meet in your real life because they'll find them interesting as well. So Habit, I would highly recommend. And I do think the language is simple enough that you can understand it in English as well. One book that I read when I was quite young is number 10 on this list, Tuesdays with Morrie. This book was written by someone who was visiting their terminally ill professor weekly on Tuesdays, and they would learn life lessons each week from this professor because he was in his last months of life. Sadly, he knew he was going to die because he had an illness, a terminal illness. So this book, again, is very sentimental. It's a little sad, but it gives you hope and inspiration as well. We're on number 11 now of this list of books. And remember, the list is linked down below if you forget any of the titles. This part of the list is going to be for advanced English learners since so many advanced English learners watch my videos. The first book is so popular, it's called Life of Pi. And of course, Pi is stuck on a lifeboat and he must befriend a wild tiger in order to survive. This book is a fantasy book, but it's really, really, really good. It's been read by probably hundreds of thousands, if not a million people around the world. So check out Life of Pi if you want a challenge to read in English. The next book is not necessarily fiction. It is nonfiction, meaning it is true, but it kind of reads almost like a story. The book is Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey. This book, again, places really high on lists of nonfiction books and memoirs, which means a book that's based on someone's life. And when I read it, as I actually listened to this book, I just thought it was so interesting, and the stories made me laugh in the book, as well as had little lessons along the way in them. So check out Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey. It's a very entertaining book. And if you want to learn more about what it's like to live or grow up in the United States, he grew up in Texas, so there's some interesting stories about that as well. And if you listen to this book, Matthew McConaughey actually narrates the book, meaning he reads it on Audible. So you can hear his American accent. He's from Texas, and you'll hear some stories about growing up in Texas. And it's very interesting if you have not grown up in the United States. Number 13 on this list is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Phil Knight was the founder and CEO of Nike. Phil Knight talks about his track and field career at Oregon, and then he talks about how he built a shoe brand basically out of nothing. So it's an inspiring story, and if you like hearing about business, this story is really interesting as well. I actually listened to this story, and I would highly recommend it. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, maybe you will enjoy number 14 on this list, Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. I am a huge Anthony Bourdain fan. If you didn't know, he passed away, so rest in peace. I loved watching all of his shows traveling around the world. As someone who's interested in all of the different cultures in the world, but doesn't get a chance to travel, his show was really inspiring to me. This memoir that he wrote about all of his time working in a kitchen is really entertaining. He has a dark sense of humor, meaning he doesn't talk about things that are light and happy. He might make fun of things that are sad, and he just has a really good way of telling stories about working in a kitchen and what it's like. So if you haven't already, make sure you check out Kitchen Confidential. I love Anthony Bourdain, and I love this memoir. Number 15 on my list is The Martian by Andy Weir. This story is set in the future, but it really is almost like what a story would be if someone was stuck on Mars and had to survive all by themselves. This story is very popular, and you can check out the movie after you finish it. Matt Damon stars in the movie, and it's just a very good story about surviving on Mars. It's a really good fiction or fake imaginary story. Let's move on to some more non-fiction books that advanced English language learners could benefit from reading. The first one on this part of the list, number 16, is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Now, an outlier refers to something that is beyond the normal. So this book talks about people who have done really great things, and it talks about their circumstances that led them to being so great. Malcolm Gladwell, he kind of challenges the idea of, is it just 10,000 hours of hard work that makes someone very exceptional or talented at something? And it goes into detail about real life examples of how people have become so great or so talented with their skills. So this book is very inspiring and very interesting because it talks about real life examples. Number 17 is a book that just everyone has to read. Whether you read it in your first language or you challenge yourself by reading it in English, How to Win Friends and Influence People is a very classic self-help book. All of the principles in this book will help you communicate better with people, make better impressions, and get what you want more in life. Now, I do have to say this book is older. It is written by Dale Carnegie, and so some of the language is a little bit older, but there are lots of summaries online that can help you get through the book, whether you're listening to it or if you're reading it on paper. If you're looking for a newer book, check out number 18, Atomic Habits. I loved this book. I listened to this book so fast when I read it because the habits are so good and so life-changing. This book is about just improving your life by 1% each day, just little by little. Having good habits will help you become a better person. And since you're learning a language, you of course need to have really good habits so that you study and practice every single day and improve by 1% at least every day. Atomic Habits is a very life-changing book for many people, so I highly recommend it. Now, I like to run in my free time. It's kind of my hobby, and I really like to challenge myself to run in races and get better and better. But running's a little hard. It's kind of torturous. It's kind of painful. And this next book helps me feel motivated. It helps me feel like I can do really hard things. Number 19 on the list is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. David Goggins is a Navy SEAL in the United States. Again, a really high-ranking military position. You have to complete very, very challenging training in order to become a Navy SEAL. If you're not familiar with the concept, it's very American military-based. David Goggins had a lot of childhood trauma. A lot of bad things happened to him. He was very obese and overweight, and now he is the face of being physically fit and being able to do hard things and face your fears. So if you want to feel motivated, check out Can't Hurt Me. Finally, number 20, I have to admit I have not read myself, but I really, really like the concept of this book, and I've heard it recommended on other podcasts I listen to, and I've heard it recommended by people around me as well. It's called The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. This book has a lesson of wisdom each day, and you're supposed to read a lesson each day for 365 days or a full year. So if you're trying to become more self-aware or more mindful, check out The Daily Stoic. Now remember, you don't just have to read all of these books on paper. You can check out Audible, and you'll get a free month of Audible to download at least one of these books on the list today. And I do get a small commission from you using the link in the description as well. I love books, and I also love podcasts, so I have a list of 10 podcasts that I recommend to all English learners as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video with me. I'll see you guys in the next English lesson. Goodbye!